Ann LeMaster. Welcome to my Common Sense Living podcast, where I will add common sense and value to your life. Get a pen and paper because you're going to want to take notes. Today, we have a special guest, Valerie Raver. We met at the Holistic Chamber of Commerce San Antonio chapter. I was instantly intrigued by her knowledge of health and wellness. Today, she's going to educate us about stress. So Valerie, welcome. Tell us more about you and what you do. What is stress?
Well, thank you, Anne. I appreciate you having me. First of all, what do? I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which, is kind of a mouthful for just saying a functionally trained holistic health coach. So what I do is I'm not interested in managing symptoms or masking them. Often we see is the case with the modern medical model of care. I want to look for the root causes of why someone is symptomatic. And I can do that by utilizing functional lab testing. So we test, we don't guess. I can use labs to look at it, but not necessarily to treat the test, but to look at it as part of the bigger constellation of what is presenting before me. With the medical history and intake forms and what I hear from my clients, because it is a very personalized, compassionate journey of healing. So that's a little bit about what I do. And what is stress? That's something I think everybody can definitely say they know and have experienced, especially more so now than ever.
Especially the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. But if you were to ask someone to define it, it's a little more elusive and mysterious when you try and narrow it down. There's actually, not all stress is bad. I don't think people realize that not all stress is bad. There's let's say, if you're like my kids, they love roller coasters, or if you like to jump out of an airplane, right? And that's an exciting, invigorating,
a thrilling stress.
Thrilling stress. That is called eustress. Now, it's not bad. It's like people enjoy it. Now, for me, that would be a form of distress. I don't like those things. I would think I was going to die, right? There's distress, there's eustress, and there's actually a third kind. And we're going to start hearing more and more about that as it becomes more popularly known. It's called hormesis. And perhaps it's something that you're familiar with, but it's the idea that you get stress, but in a smaller dose, that it's not going to be damaging. But in that process, it actually strengthens and makes stronger. The saying, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
Well, so that's kind of the idea of hormesis.
So it's kind of like doing arm weights, or what? You stress it and then
exercise. Yes. And then there's exercise. You can stress the muscles for a short amount of time, but not to tear, break, or overwork them, right? But to strengthen them.
It's a positive stress.
That is. And then there's, the hot, cold treatments that were recommended for, I don't know if you heard, but in the more functional and natural circles as a potential thing that you can do when you get COVID is to alternate hot and cold showers. That puts the body under certain stress, but it actually stimulates the immune system. Right. And that would be utilizing hormesis. So that's just a couple of examples. But so what is stress? When we talk about stress, we're usually talking about the distress, not the eustress, not the hormesis, but the distress. And specifically in distress, there's 3 different types of distress. And it's important for people to know about that because, the point and purpose of this discussion is really for people to be aware. And as they hear this, to think for themselves, what are the things in their lives that are actual stress contributors? Because when I say there's 3 kinds of stress, there's mental, emotional, there's physical and mechanical stress, and there's chemical and biochemical. And I can talk a little bit about each of those, but even just knowing those different kinds of things are causing the same kind of physiological stress response in our body. My hope is that people, as they begin to realize, oh my gosh, this thing is stressing my body, and this thing is stressing my body, then you can't change what you don't recognize. And so we can recognize the things that are factors of stress that are affecting our health and our well-being. Then we can start to take action to either mitigate, minimize, eliminate, reduce those stress factors on our body to improve our own health and well-being. So the first kind of stress is a mental emotional stress. And of course, that's another thing that has just skyrocketed. It has, I think, increased by 25% just since 2020.
Wow.
And that's a significant amount of the American population.
Right.
We're experiencing more depression, more anxiety than ever before. Now, just the perceived stress of dying, or the watching others being ill, or all of the things that are associated with the recent pandemic, that alone can be the mental emotional stress. But we also know that it can be a secondary effect of chronic conditions. If you're in chronic pain, right, over time, you're more likely to be depressed and anxious because of your limited mobility. You feel like you're a burden on others. Like, those can lead into a mental and emotional stress. So it's one part of it, but they are usually working together. And the second type of stress that I mentioned is a physical stress. If you have an old injury from high school, that if it never healed properly, or if you continue to strain, then that can compound over time and still contribute to the body's physiological response of constantly being stressed. If it's scarring, or a heel that didn't quite heal straight, your body's going to compensate, and over years of compensating, right, if it's spinal or foot or knee, I mean, any of that,
so then you walk with a limp, and then that throws you off on everything.
And then 20 years later, you're dealing with other things as a result of it, right? But it didn't just come out of the blue.
That limp now affects the hip or something like that. Yeah.
Or digestion, or nerve pathways, right? Neuropathy. I mean, who knows? Circulation, chronic headaches. I mean, there's other things that don't necessarily look to be directly connected, which is why hiring someone like myself is so helpful, because I can look at the hidden stressors. And hidden is an acronym that we use for the areas in which we look for the places that you have stress in your body, and hormone, in the immune system, and digestion, detoxification, energy production, and the nervous system. All of those areas are potential areas in which we can find healing opportunities where there is stress.
So one of the blood tests that I'm familiar with, there's a C-reactive protein, and then there's a HS C-reactive protein or something, which goes a little bit deeper. Is that right? A little bit more. I don't know, but you're not supposed to be more than a 3.
So as far as like what is showing up to be stress on the body?
Yeah, that's the test I have done. It talks about the stress, and I had mercury fillings, and I removed them. I was a 3. I went down to a 0.9 just having those mercury fillings taken out.
Yes.
And that was on that test that showed that.
And that is a perfect example of the third type of stress, which is a chemical and biochemical stress on the body. We are exposed to more environmental toxins now than ever. And mercury fillings is a classic example that affects more people than they are aware of, right? Lots of people have them, but not many people think of that as a heavy metal exposure, right? Because they were sold as silver fillings. Silver is benign and it's fine, but it's actually almost half mercury, the most toxic element on the planet.
And it's called amalgams, right? Amalgam, yeah.
And that's why I would strongly encourage, I cannot emphasize enough the need, if you are needing dental work, to look for a biological dentist. They're going to be using methods and practices that are not going to be introducing more toxins, more potential reactive things in your body. They will even test, if you're going to do an implant, they'll even test to make sure, is this titanium or is this porcelain or whatever going to be reactive? Like there's tests for it. And utilizing ozone and infrared light therapy. And they'll certainly, in the removal of mercury fillings, they will do it in such a way that is properly done.
Right.
There are conventional dentists that are removing them, but it's so toxic and noxious that it really needs to be done in such a way that it's not only protecting the patient, but also the staff, because
Right.
compounded exposure to mercury is pretty serious. It's a side note from what we're talking about, but there's an example. There's a world famous dentist, and forgive me, I can't remember his name. He's actually here in Texas, and he ended up in the wheelchair and had to quit his practice. It started out as tremors, and he was in a wheelchair. And after contemplating, and he came to the realization that it was an excessive mercury toxicity.
Wow.
Once he detoxed from the mercury, he's back in practice. And now he has people coming to him from all over the world to help them do the same thing. And his practice is a much more functional minded and holistic practice.
Wow.
But that's kind of an aside, but it's a good example of environmental toxins. There's
Not just
endocrine
sunscreen.
disruptors everywhere. What was that?
It's not just a sunscreen. That just kills me that they say slather on all this sunscreen. Well, it blocks your vitamin D, but it's a chemical. Now, if it's a natural or whatever, but yeah, I know somebody who's pasty white because they never go outside without sunscreen.
And you bring up a good point, because I always like to recommend and suggest that people go to the environmental working group. It's a fabulous website. They've done a lot of the homework for us. The idea of environmental toxin exposure is really, you just have to be mindful of what you put in, on, and around your body. The air that you breathe, is it being purified? Are you near some kind of plant where you're breathing things? The water that you're drinking, is it clean? There's heavy metals, there's prescription drugs, there's all kinds of things in the water that we ought not be intaking into our bodies. Over time, it's going to have its own effect. And
Right.
people don't really think of water as being poisoned, but it's not really an option to drink tap water anymore. And bottled water is not the alternative, because then you've got all kinds of, even if it is a BPA free bottle, right? Because there was enough ruckus that was raised to have that eliminated. Well, what about all the BP other letters? Like, they're often more dangerous than the BPA that is the only thing that's being regulated to be kept out.
Right.
So yeah, plastic bottles aren't the answer either. Get a decent water filtration system. You can get, a Berkey on the counter system, or you can get something a little more involved.
Well, I have a Berkey and I absolutely love it. I love it.
And that's, it's a really high quality, very good filter, and it's more economical than some of the alternatives for like a whole home system.
I grew up in the country. We had our own well, and I would say that you could chew water. It was so full of minerals, you could chew it. So when I drink my Berkey water, it's not quite that chewy, but it tastes different, even in Fiji. But Fiji comes in a plastic bottle. But and I can't think the name of it now, but there's a mineral, Bio Body, I think. And Dr. Terry Walls is the one that I was introduced to it from. And I use that, especially down here, the heat in Texas. It replenishes the minerals. And I put just a little bit of that in my water. Oh my God, I can chew the water.
I don't know if that's going to sell a lot of your listeners, that not everybody's looking for chewable water, but it is important to have that mineral content in the water.
Exactly.
When you drink water and it's reverse osmosis, or if it's purified, you're not getting the minerals. And and especially in Texas, when we need to rehydrate, you can actually dilute whatever electrolytes you have in your body, making it harder for your body to rehydrate, because you need the minerals in the water as well.
So I think we got off track a little bit. So
hopefully it's all good information.
Oh, it certainly is. But have we covered the causes and the types then? Or do you have more on that?
So there's the mental, emotional, the physical and mechanical, and then the chemical and biochemical. I would like to say something a little more about the chemical and biochemical, though, because it's such a broad type of stress that not to overwhelm your listeners, that you think like, we're swimming in a sea of environmental toxins, but we kind of are. And even if you can't eradicate all of them, we can be mindful to minimize the effects of them. Read your labels, eat organic so you're not getting, the pesticides and herbicides, and avoid glyphosate at all costs. Check out the environmental working group and look at the clean 15 and the dirty dozen and see which ones that, if I have a limited grocery budget, to put that money where it matters most. And some conventional things are grown in such a way that it doesn't matter if you buy organic or conventional, and other things, it matters a whole heck of a lot. Strawberries, bell peppers, they're just so sprayed with things that you're just taking a spoonful of poison every time you're eating those conventionally grown ones. So it's definitely worth putting a few more cents into buying those organic versions than maybe, a mango or avocado. But they come up with an updated list every year. They also have on there different products that you can look up. Whatever you put, your skin is your largest organ. So whatever you're putting on or in your skin is going to potentially have a positive or negative effect on your body. And, if we're taking a shower in water that's not filtered or, chlorinated, or the fumes that we're breathing, like when our pores are open and we're breathing it, like we're getting all the more of whatever is in it in our bodies at that time. The shampoos and soaps and lotions and cleansers and cosmetics are huge. There's a lot of endocrine disruptors in cosmetics, and women, women are just poisoning themselves all the time without really even being aware of it. So in the products we use to clean our homes, and the things that we have our kids crawling on, the outgassing of carpets and fabrics, the fire retardant fabrics that are on so many kids' beddings now are actually toxic. So it's worth finding out about. It can be a little overwhelming if this is all new. And I don't want to add to more people getting depressed and anxious when they hear about this, but it's so important to know. Because, you can't change what you don't know. And when you know, then you're empowered to make the changes as you're able, where you can, and just do what you can.
What you can, when you can. You don't just throw everything out and start fresh. You take one thing at a time. Just like with your beverage. I would tell, I'm in the medical field, and I would tell people, just skip the diet soda. If that's the only change you make in your diet, skip the diet soda. And then you go on after you've done that. You might have to, I was hooked on soda for years. And I went down from a bottle a day to a bottle a week, to, increments. Finally, I probably haven't had a soda now for 5 years. Not even a sip. I don't need it.
And do you miss it?
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I do, is I help people make lifestyle and behavior modifications where they're at, as they're able, things that are practical and actionable, because the important thing is to do something. You don't do anything ever, then you're just going to be at the mercy of whatever you're exposed to, or whatever you're given, or whatever that somebody who is more profit minded is going to sell you. But by doing something, over time, that is going to have a compounded positive effect. Just by quitting diet soda, you have done your body such a service just in that. For lots of reasons. Like, we could have a whole talk on that.
Yeah, I know. But you got to start somewhere. So start with one thing. If you eat a donut 3 at a time, whatever, make it just down to 1. Just cut it in half and celebrate all those little changes that you make. Because, oh man, talk about lifting yourself out of depression. Just knowing
that is really good that you mentioned that. Yes, celebrate your wins. Even if you're the only one doing it, if there isn't anybody else to pat yourself on the back. I'm a big list maker, and for me, it's a big win when I can cross that off my list or give it a check. And if that's a goal that you set for yourself, like, I am not going to, do blank today, or I'm going to make sure to do blank today. Then when you get to check it off, that there's like some endorphins are firing in there, like something in there, and that's going to have its own positive biochemical effects. That's going to negate the physiological stress response. That's going to really be helpful. I always tell people that, Hippocrates is quoted as saying, like, all disease begins in the gut. And I believe all healing begins in the mind. You have to first believe that things can be better. And with that belief, we can just take that first step. And that ought to be celebrated.
Yeah. Cool. Next, shall we talk about how we can diminish that stress? And it depends which stress it is, right? We kind of touched with the chemical one, just be aware but like
so there's a lot, and
Mhm.
and if anything, I hope whoever listens to this walks away feeling empowered of the very many things that can be done. And it's not so much that you have to do all of it today, but just know that there's a lot to choose from with where to start. The mental, emotional, the power of the mind is more profound than most people realize. And if you are, I think it's just important to place ourselves in a positive environment, whether it's in your own head, to make an effort to find 3 things a day to be grateful for. And at the end of a month, you will be in a different mindset. It will shift you. And it might be just by degrees, but it will be such a good shift that you won't want to go back. You will recognize, feel, and experience a different in your day-to-day experience. If you can find just things to be grateful for. Gratitude is something that helps alter our state of mind, and it can help get you out of a place where there's that downward spiral of thought that you have to guard against that. Having personally kind of struggled with that myself, I was able gradually, as I put more effort into it, because it doesn't happen by itself, you could choose every day, as I put more effort into trying to recognize that thought pattern that would run away with me and kind of what I just call a downward spiral, I'd be able to catch it sooner. I wouldn't have to quite go down before I started my way back up. And that is really, I think, choosing to be positive, which sounds easier. I mean, it sounds simpler than it is, right? It is a choice. But if you're struggling with depression and anxiety, please don't roll your eyes and think that you can't do it. Just think of one thing to be grateful for, one thing. And then tomorrow, think of one more. And if you need to, make a list so that you can see that list grow and make a different thing every day. It's okay if it's the same thing, but let's pick a different thing every day. Because sometimes it's as simple as here in Texas, right? I'm just, hot as can be. And right as I'm thinking how hot I am, a breeze comes on my face. It could be something so simple. It doesn't necessarily mean like I got that raise. Well, maybe you didn't get that raise, but you made someone smile. You helped someone finish a project, or you completed a project, like just something to be grateful for, whatever that is. That I think is really powerful for the mental, emotional. I think it's also important that if you recognize that there are toxic mental, toxic thoughts, toxic relationships, toxic environments, then do what you can to place yourself in a situation that is going to support, encourage, and be healing for you. And that is often the hardest thing. And by all means, enlist help, because we're not meant to walk through this life alone. And we all need coaches. I'm a coach and I need coaches. I've got a business coach. I've got, life and relational coaches. We all need help and insight to help us navigate through some things. And especially when it comes to mental, emotional, because it's hard for us to get out of our own mind to see how to think or do something differently. So with that stress, it might take getting some help. The physical and mechanical stress, chiropractors, acupuncturists, like get some help where you can help realign or heal that tissue, or work with that injury. It's pretty amazing what chiropractors and acupuncturists and the physical people can do to help. There's exercises and things that you can do also if you want to get out and get physical, but I wouldn't do that without guidance to make sure you're doing it properly, because you could be aggravating something that you don't even know. And chiropractors can be used for all sorts of things that people don't even realize. Like I was giving a talk, and I was talking about how quoting some studies that were done that improved migraines with weekly chiropractic adjustments. Because
Oh,
you think
wow.
about, the spine that goes through, right, our spinal cord,
Yeah,
it's affecting all of our organs and everything, right? And if that's, a little out of whack, then it may manifest in a way that we don't necessarily think of. That is the result of a misalignment of our spine.
and
Digestive issues will improve.
right, right. I have a injury. Oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it now. The I can't think of it. Anyway, back in April, I went to the doctor and I said about this agonizing pain I have, and she says, "Well, I can offer prednisone, naproxen, the NSAIDs, or therapy." And I said, "Therapy? That's what I wanted 9 months ago." Well, I'll tell you what, I've gone to the therapist and he's helped a lot, physical therapist, but I found a sports massage better than therapy. Oh my God. And it's cost me over $100 a week. Insurance won't pay for it, but I love myself enough that I realize I have to get it fixed so that I can do the things that I used to do. And I know it came from an injury from over gardening, gotta get her done between the weather or this or that, gotta get her done. It's my Midwestern drive, I guess. But, so anyway, I'm getting that taken care of. And anyway, you get sports massage is so good.
That's awesome. There's lots of different kinds of massage. And it's hard to convince people sometimes to invest in themselves.
Yes.
But you don't realize the value of it until you don't have it.
Right.
And I like health. It is your greatest asset. You
Yes,
can have
it is.
all the money in the world, but if you don't have health and a quality of life, it's not going to mean much if you can't move, or if you're in constant pain, or your cognitive, there's just this brain fog. All the different things that people are increasingly experiencing because their health is diminishing, because of their exposure to the toxins, or they're not recognizing and proactively managing the stress in their life.
Right. And the stress addressed just adds to more stress, more complications. It's a downward spiral.
It is. Yeah. But see, that's what this talk is about, so that people can recognize, oh my gosh, this thing that really bugs me so much, that thing is compounding and affecting your health, because it's causing a stress response in your body. It's affecting the hormone regulation in your body. Your cortisol is spiking, your DHEA is shut off, your melatonin might be out of whack. That's going to affect your immunity. That's going to affect your circadian rhythms. You're not going to heal and repair because you're not getting sleep. You're not going to properly absorb your food because your digestion's now shut down, because you're always in a state of fight or flight. I mean, there's all these things that are just interconnected. The brain-gut barrier, you've got inflammation in the brain. So now you're at a greater risk for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and, other kinds of cognitive and degenerative disorders. And what we know about our genes, if you have the genetic makeup that you're predisposed for certain things, then you're going to be sure to turn on those genes if you continue in that track. But you recognize the stresses in your life now, you work at eliminating them now, then you can take control over what genes actually get turned on. You make change, the decisions you make today are the biggest decisions for your health tomorrow, right? 80% of all chronic conditions are the result of lifestyle choices. Now think about that.
80%?
80%, right? So if our lifestyle choices have that much effect on our health, then let that be the good news of it's within your power to make a difference starting today.
Yeah. So one of the ways I think if a person can get themselves there for dealing with the stress is to recognize it, sit back and do deep breathing. And
Yes.
I did something where you count to 4 and you breathe in, you hold it to 4, and then you breathe out to 4. And it's amazing, you know, I mean, you can get your heart rate down from 22 down to 8, 10, something like that in a minute, you know. It's
Yeah, it's pretty powerful when you can take control of your heart rate variability, because
right.
when we are actively in a stress response, our breathing is shallower and
Right.
it's faster, so we're not getting as much oxygen to our brain and to our tissues. You're not flushing out, right? Our lymphatic system cannot work as well. The anxiety is a response to our hormones, and so they're going to get out of whack. They're going to be in that fight, flight, or freeze response. When you make a conscious choice to take control of that and breathe, then you're bringing all that back into more of a regulated place.
Right.
And you are stopping the damaging results at the cellular level, that if that was to be left unhindered, right? I mean, what oxidative stress is the damage to our cells as a result of antioxidants, but also being in a constant state of stress. And it ages us prematurely. You know, there's the term like the biological age. Like, what age is your body reflecting, regardless of what your chronological age is? And if you have been under a lot of stress over a long time, then your biological age, what your organs and your skin, your body is, like everything, going to be reflecting much older than you actually are. So you're taking years off your life
Right.
by not doing anything about the stress that we're exposed to. But you know, the positive thing in that is that we can reverse that. Not only can we stop that premature aging, but we can also reverse it to the point that we can be biologically younger than we are chronologically old.
Yeah,
that's kind of exciting to think about.
It is. And I take a different perspective about things that happen in my life. In order to handle them, I make a game of it, because anybody likes to play a game. So I put it in the mindset of, it's a game. Now, how can I do this or that? And I can't think of an example right now, but I like to play. So I make a game. And if I make that stress is a game, well, maybe I'm going to make a game on eating or whatever it might be. Or, like I said, I can't think of an example right now, but my mindset is to put it in the perspective of a game, because then I can handle it, because I like to play.
I like that, Ann, because you know what that does is it kind of takes the mental anxiety out of it.
Yes.
And then you're just dealing with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's often kind of that state of anxiety. They're like, I don't even know what to do, or it kind of can get stuck. But by making a game out of it, I like that idea.
Well, and when you make a game out of it, you know, you think of a game, whether you're playing soccer or checkers, you're thinking about the next move and how are you going to handle that. So in a way, you know, you're taking control of the stress in a way.
Absolutely.
But you got to get to that point first, and that first step is the hardest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the celebration when you take that first step, how good it feels.
Yeah, you know, there's just so many environmental exposures, and it's, you know, endocrine disruptors are everywhere. There's plastic, I mentioned the outgassing of things, yes. The receipts from the grocery store, yes. Right? Makeup, and there's so many different things that can just affect our endocrine. And what are we seeing, you know, skyrocket, like thyroid issues and, you know, hormonal imbalances. Right. What's happening when we're exposed to endocrine disruptors is that our estrogen receptors are being hijacked. And so what takes its place is acting similar to estrogen. And so our bodies are overly estrogenic, and it's all about balance. It's all about balance. You can't have something that's going to bring you out of balance, because that's when we get symptomatic. And our symptoms are going to show up according to whatever, our bio-individual weak links are. So it's not a one size fits all, there isn't a one size fits all health program, because whatever symptoms one person may have, they may have them because the root cause is far upriver from whatever that symptom is than somebody else. Headaches, digestive issues. I mean, they can show up for a variety of different reasons. That's why you have to look at the why. Why do you have those symptoms? What is it about your body? What is stressing it? And then you can start to unravel it and remove the things that are keeping it out of balance. Because my job is really to remove the stressors, and working with the body, because the body inherently wants to go back into balance. We just need to get the things that are stressing it out of the way so that it can bring itself back into balance.
And when you have that pain in your shoulder or that migraine, it's your body really saying, hey, wake up, wake up. I'm giving you a signal here, fix it. Yeah.
Yes. And when your body will speak to you, and it will start whispering.
Yes.
And then when you don't listen to the whispers, it'll start yelling and screaming and throwing a full-on tantrum.
And then sometimes maybe it just takes you to the floor, and now it's got your attention. But now you have a long road to go, probably, When you were saying about all this a few statements ago, made me think about the intake forms. That's why they're 5 pages long, because have you had, well, what, this is 2000 or 2022. What do you care what happened to me in 1970? But yeah, all that kind of stuff.
It all matters. Have you ever had surgery? Do you have the fillings? Have you been on antibiotics? Because here's something a lot of people don't realize. 1 round of antibiotics, antibiotic, the word itself means anti-life. It's destroying the life in your gut, the good bugs and the bad. So 1 round of antibiotics can possibly take as long as a year to heal from. Now, you're not told that by the doctor, because you're not given anything to rebuild that once you've destroyed what was there. People who are on 3 rounds of antibiotics, we know that your gut, your biome is pretty much completely decimated.
Right.
Now, it's not to say it can't be rebuilt, but you have to actively rebuild it. You can't just let it go and just hope for the best, because hope is not a plan in and of itself. Hope is a good beginning to believe that there can be a better way, but then you have to take action, and taking the right action that is going to support and build your body to strengthen its vitality, and not simply just manage symptoms and further congest your liver with prescription drugs that it may not be equipped to break down. Right. And then you've got more symptoms, like the side effects from the drugs. And so then you take another drug, and it's just a cycle of trial and error to figure out the right prescription and dosage. And that's not a long-term plan.
Right. Oh, it's a deep little rabbit hole, I'll tell you. Just having what causes the stress, how to recognize it, what to do about it, and then get treatment for it, whatever. And God bless the doctors, but some of them just either, and in their defense, they are so busy. They have, I don't know how many patients, say 65 patients.
Yeah.
You get 15 minutes with one, and that's it. So in their defense, they're overwhelmed. And anybody who works for a living knows you have 8 hours of that. Then you drive home. You want to sit down with your beer or whatever. Maybe you do not want to look up the case that you had that really has your mind, because the pharmaceutical rep came in and said, oh, if you have X, Y, or Z, you need to take this drug. Now, I know a guy that was a very successful pharmaceutical rep. He finally quit. His conscience couldn't do it, because I asked him, so this drug A, and these are the side effects, how do you go about that with the doctor? He said, well, you kind of like sidestep it. So the doctor is not even told the truth about the drug. And sometimes yes, sometimes no. I'm just saying it in general. And the other thing, when I went to nursing school,
it's a profit-driven industry.
Right. And when I went to nursing school, it was a good school. It was one of the top-rated junior colleges in the country. And it had not been bought by Big Pharma. Now they're in there so much because it's all about the dollar. And I remember in class, they asked us, which is the driver of the body, the brain or the gut? So we're all sitting there talking amongst it. well, if you're brain dead, you're dead. So it's got to be the brain. They knew back in the 90s it was the gut. And now look at what they've done to us.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And I think it's really, important to be clear that, I'm in no way bashing doctors. They're,
no, I don't.
brilliant people. They've worked really hard. They have come to a place where they're just kind of stuck. It's the
Yes.
industry, not so much the doctors, because
Exactly.
honestly, they're overworked and
Yes.
they're undertrained. Not to say they're undertrained in pharmaceuticals and protocols. They're undertrained in nutrition.
Right.
They're undertrained in what can be useful, effective, and safe that doesn't require a drug. That part of their training really is just like, what out of 4 years of medical school, 1 semester of nutrition, and all the rest is
that much.
If that much. So it's not really their fault,
No,
because
I
they're
agree.
operating on how they're trained.
Exactly.
They're also operating within the confines that they're allowed to legally operate, because in a lot of cases they're gagged. They may know better. They want to do better, but they can't if they want to keep their license.
Exactly.
And that's a structural issue.
Yes. That I did not mean to imply that I was not supportive of doctors.
No, I didn't take it that way, and I know you well enough, but I just want to
Well,
be
I know,
clear
but I
to
don't want the
whoever's
public to
listening,
think
because
that.
it's not so much an us against them conversation, but it is a matter of work with your doctor, because ultimately, if you choose to go a more natural route, or if you choose to want to, like, hey, before I do this steroid, I'm going to try and do what I can with diet and lifestyle first. They may or may not support you, but ultimately it's your choice. And the whole point of this is recognizing the stress for you to be empowered, for you to take control, for you to do what you can, because nobody can make you well except for you. You have to first take responsibility. I am my own primary care practitioner. And then outside of that, I can seek the help that I need.
So is there anything else that you can think that you haven't covered? Because I think we covered a lot.
We covered a lot. We touched base on a whole lot of things that could really be even their own conversations. And I hope it's not overwhelming or too much, but it's nice to know that there's lots out there that can be, hopefully someone will grasp onto some of it and make the most of whatever resonates with them. Because there's a lot of things that we can do to begin taking back control of our health and start feeling better.
Right. Okay. Well, Valerie, how do people get a hold of you if they want to contact you?
So my website is valeriefdnp.com. I can be reached there. And then from there, you can schedule an appointment with me or reach out to me. I do offer an hour free consultation with whoever is interested. Because of the nature of what I do, it's not the conventional approach, and so it bears a little bit of explanation about the labs and how I work and what's involved if you decide to commit to a health rebuilding journey with me. So I welcome anyone, even if you're just curious about what it is, to even know about this option. I'm happy to speak with anybody.
Thank you. That's very, very nice of you, and very informative. You've been very informative. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Dan.
All right. Well, thank you so much for contributing to our talk today with so much good information.
My pleasure.
Okay. So I want to thank everybody for tuning into my Common Sense Living podcast today. And I hope you enjoyed it and that you did learn something new. So please leave a kind review and share this episode with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. You'll find me on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms. And don't forget, we'll be back again next week with another insightful episode of Common Sense Living. I can hardly wait. Toodaloo. Thank you for tuning in to my Common Sense Living podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure you learned something new. Please leave a kind review and share this episode with a friend. And be sure to subscribe yourself. You'll find me on iTunes, Spotify, and other platforms. And don't forget, we'll be here again next week with another insightful episode of Common Sense Living. I can hardly wait.